Hello all, Rick here with another Starship video breakdown as we move through the collection of early 23rd century designs, this time looking into the lore of the Engle Class. The design was created as one of many by John Eaves, and the Enterprise NX-01 was used as the main inspiration, although later lore would paint it as not the closest vessel to that time frame. The naming convention for these ships was pilots, beginning with the shuttle commander Joe Engle, and subsequently we saw the USS Earhart. The outlier seems to be the Toplana Hath, which was named after the Vulcan ship of first contact with humans, itself being named after Surak's mentor. As was with its real-life origin, the lore reflects this. The ship, more than any other that came from this era of design in Starfleet, drew directly from the NX class for inspiration, even down to the fact it was reputed to have used the original space frame designs for the saucer, only scaled up slightly. The design itself, however, began as far back as 2208, as yet another experimental design to trial a new warp drive setup. The Malachowski was already in production as a reliable design, while the front line of exploration was covered by the Walker and Shepard cruisers, leaving some room to begin creating new ideas. Other ships took priority over the Engle for a long while, postponing the construction and launch until 2224. The premise of this design was to create an efficient warp vessel that did not need the high power requirements of the Cardenas class, for example. To do this, the profile was flattened down as far as possible, and the nacelles moved to either side of the ship, with enough space between the ends to allow for line of sight between them. With the design being originally drawn up as a copy of the NX class, things like the deflector design carried over almost one-to-one, while the bridge remained in the centre of the saucer. The design itself proved to be easily replicable and was one of the first ship designs to be widely disseminated between New Federation worlds. Construction shipyards were therefore numerous, but began at the Tranquility Fleet Yards of Luna, the Yoyodyne Propulsion Labs, and the Van Manen Slips. Over time, this reliable vessel faded from active production around the 2240s, but was assigned duties where such reliability was key. This saw it undertake courier duties, emergency response ships, and the final vessels of the class were under the wing of Starfleet Medical. To this end, the sickbay and triage facilities were larger than normal for a Federation vessel at the cost of some of the more versatile scientific suites. Over time, changes were made to lessen the deuterium tanks as the Bussard ramscoop technology improved, and the Engle was fully decommissioned in 2290. In terms of scale, the ship was 387.7 metres long, which made it 280 wide and 55 tall. It seems to have 15 decks, but this is an estimate. When it comes to warp drive, the Engle contained a lot of variability, with each nacelle housing 24 coils, each of which could be individually aligned and controlled from a dedicated nacelle control room that relayed with engineering and the bridge. It technically had the most complex and advanced warp systems for a few decades. These nacelle control rooms, however, required dedicated warp coil specialists trained in the use of the variety of equipment. All this, however, allowed it to travel at warp 6.5 as its cruise speed and attain a theoretical maximum of warp 9 on the old scale. Decades later, this was the Constitution class's maximum safe velocity, although it could go higher. So for the Engle to achieve this 20 years earlier was incredibly impressive. When it comes to weaponry, the amount of phaser points is very high, but that seems to be common for this era, as phaser technology itself was not as powerful as it would be in the mid-23rd century, and of course, phaser strips are capable of condensing an entire saucer setup into one or two beam arrays. The top yielded 14 points with 2 smaller turrets. On the rear, there were 2 more arrays, and underneath there was a further 12 points with 4 smaller single turrets. This comes to a total of 34, but none were excessively powerful, and there are also 4 torpedo launchers with 1 front-facing and 3 rear. The shuttle bays too were smaller than average and very close to the sick bay to allow for easy access. The Engle Class's speed, combined with the high level of armament, made it vital during the Klingon War, as it could shadow fleet operations and then dive in to recover the wounded and escape again before it was destroyed. An excellent rescue ship. This also prevented them from taking to the front lines in a more aggressive capacity, as that would risk their charges. Now overall, I don't mind the design, but feel that it really is very flat. If it crashes into an ocean, I expect it to skim on the surface for at least 4 bounces. The design itself too looks very simple, with a dish, nacelles and a very boxy hull. I think this ties very well into the notion that it made for a widely popular design among smaller shipyards, as it was easy to produce, and at the time, it made a good impression among new UFP worlds with how reliable and speedy it was. It's a good choice. Thanks for watching this breakdown on this pancake. Until the next video, I've been Rick, and thanks again, and goodbye.